This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Baglin.
For many years, Kentucky Afield TV has featured a spring live call-in fishing show featuring a panel of experts from the Department of Fish and Wildlife who would answer your calls and your questions about the best fishing opportunities, best baits, methods. And it wasn't, though, until 2015 we did a similar show for fall fishing. We give you a best of version right now, plus 2 surprise guests. Kentucky Afield TV on Kentucky Afield Radio. A friend of mine is a liar, so I'm going to do what the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife says. Take a phony fishing. What he'll say is a 10-pound bass is really a little closer to 1. Oh, and that fancy rod he'll buy, he'll say he found at a yard sale. All lies. Maybe you should try fishing too. Don't think you'll like it? Don't kid yourself. Kentucky Fishing. It'll make a liar out of you. Hip's a hip word. Hip-hop music. This cat is really hip, says 70s star Sammy Davis Jr. But for migratory bird hunters, HIP is the law. HIP stands for Harvest Information Program. To hunt birds like doves or geese, you must complete the HIP survey first to help officials better estimate game bird populations. Go to the My Profile page at the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife website. You just need 5 minutes. Hip hip hooray. fw.ky.gov. It struck me, Tim Farmer, that brand new show you did for fall fishing, the live call-in, was just like an ESPN game day for the start of the fall fishing season. Did it feel that way to you?
You know, I think it's something that we have needed to do. I mean, the popularity of the call-in shows is obvious. I mean, we get a gazillion calls from people who want to know about fishing. So in the spring, we have so many questions, they're not all answered. So it was natural that we say, hey, fishing doesn't stop. No, when it comes to fall. You know, for a lot of people, it just begins because crappie and everything's coming on. So, yeah, it's obvious that it needed to be done, and, yeah, it was the kickoff. Did you get the response you thought, or was it maybe the same as spring? Overwhelming. And that's what we want. And when we have people that are calling in, and if you watch the show, you'll notice that our biologists are so on question after question after question. My goal as the moderator is to say, okay, let's get as many as we can. The way it works is people call in. There's a phone bank, usually 15 people answering the phones. People call in. These folks writing the questions down will write the name, where they're from, and the question. These questions will be piled up instantly, run back to me, and I will sort through those and try to find one question after the other. We have 3 people on the panel generally. Their goal is to answer as many questions as they can in a short amount of time, quick, concise answers. So those people who took the time and energy to sit down and make that call, so their questions can be answered. So they do such a great job. And I told them on the show, I was amazed at how much information they retain as biologists and can pop off at the top of their heads. Yes, we stocked 500,000 fish over here. Yes, we're stocking this lake right here. And yes, next Thursday there'll be this event going on here. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they do it. There's so many streams, so many lakes, farm ponds. I don't know how they can keep it all straight. I do. The guys and ladies that we hire to do the job here at the Department of Fish and Wildlife are the best of the best. Why do you think everybody in the world wants to come to Kentucky to hunt and fish? It's kind of obvious. We got great people running the show. They do know. They live it. They breathe it. Was there a word mentioned as more than musky? Did it predominate? I remember you opening the show and you said we got to talk about other things than just muskie. Muskie was hot, and there was a lot of there were also a lot of crappie questions, but really, when you crack, there was a lot of Asian carp stuff too. People concerned about the Asian carp, but probably muskie was the winner. So, where are you going to fish this fall? Let me just put it this way: where you fish your own time, probably your personal private fishing hole, and I'm not going to give away any secrets. But the show, where we're going to see on the TV show this fall. Here's the great thing about Kentucky Afield. Here's the way it works. I get calls from all over, I get emails. I don't know. I can't tell you next week where we'll go because somebody will call me and say, "Hey, man, this is happening right now." I will tell you this week. If we don't get rained out, because not so much us, but the cameras won't take rain. But I have a fellow who's on some big bluegill, fall bluegill. That's my favorite. That's what I know will happen this week if the weather doesn't melt our cameras. So that's the first thing up. We got muskie, we have crappie lined up, we have bass fishing lined up. And again, the great thing about this job is I get so much input from so many people, just like on this call-in show. It doesn't stop there. They call the office, they email, they send letters. The Facebook
aspect of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a great addition to have people just Facebook you questions.
Like it or not, Facebook is here to stay. It's the way we talk, and it's one of the ways that we talk a lot. So, hey, let's use every resource we got to answer as many questions as we can. And during the time we get a lull, I'm waiting for more questions to come in, or I've picked out a bunch of questions that we've already answered. And if you see me throwing something in a trash can during the show, or if you hear on the radio, you hear a chunk in the trash can, it's not me throwing a question out I don't like. It's one that's already been answered.
Right.
And the very fact that they bring these questions in as quickly as they get them, they let me sort them. I can sort them. You'll see, if you watch the show, you'll see me sitting there thumbing through them. If you're listening to it, you'll hear it.
September, October, there is a ton of fishing season, hunting seasons. You got dove, deer archery, turkey.
Elk.
I mean, elk. It goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
Is the show expected to really cover all of that this fall? Will you?
Yes.
Can you keep it all?
Yeah. We ain't scared.
Holy cow!
You know, and that's the beauty of what we do. And here's what happens on sometimes things don't work out. We're dealing with Mother Nature here. We schedule heavy, so we'll have plenty to show. We follow the seasons, and we live on spontaneity. Now, some things we have to line up, such as an elk hunt. We know who we're going out with because we had to set that up way ahead of time. But for the most part, we know we're going to deer hunt on my place because that's what we do. We don't go out and, I can't. Somebody calls me and says, hey, I got a big buck over here on my property. You don't get that chance to do that. Our general viewing audience doesn't. So I try to play fair. I've got a very small farm. And I'm going to hunt there, and I'm going to take what nature gives me. So we know certain things we're going to do. Others, we get a call, hey, we're headed down the road. We got the whole state to cover.
So we've got another live show coming up in advance of deer season, early November.
Yep.
So we'll watch for you on KET. It's going to be a great show. I'm glad you could stop by before we play what we heard back in late August. This is going to be a fun show.
Hey, and good call on your part to recognize that this is something that we can put, it's just as good on audio as it is on video.
Hello and welcome to Kentucky Afield. I'm Tim Farmer. Tonight we have a special 1-hour call-in show all about fishing. To my left, Jeff Ross, Assistant Director of Fisheries. To his left, John Williams, Fisheries Biologist Extraordinaire. And all the way on the end, Chris Stewart, Conservation Officer. We have all kinds of questions already. Remember, on Facebook, Kentucky Afield, like it, and then put us a question on there. We'll try to answer. All right, let's get right to it. Jeff is from Fayette County. Why does fishing get better in the fall?
Well, probably mainly because the water starts cooling and the bait fish start coming up shallower, and the fish are able to get up shallow and makes it easier for people to catch them. But the fish become more active as the water starts cooling.
Tim is from Anderson County. Is Lake Cumberland full now?
It's almost full. It's been full this year. I think we're down about 717 elevation, which is 7 or 8 feet below summer pool. But yeah, it's been full earlier in the year. Of course, we had a lot of rain early, and it should be full from here on out each year.
Let's talk about your position particularly. Where are you at? Talk about your district.
Right. I'm located in Somerset, Kentucky is our office, which we cover southeastern Kentucky, includes Lake Cumberland, Laurel Lake, Del Hollow, Lake Linville, Wood Creek Lake, and then also basically the Cumberland River system and tributaries to that. So we cover a 15-county area in southeast Kentucky.
Lee's from Franklin County wants to know, how is the fishing, smallmouth fishing in Elkhorn Creek? And let me tell you what, I was there a couple weeks ago using my fly rod.
Yeah, it's starting
like
to
everybody
pick up
should.
again.
Let me tell you what, almost 4-pound fish on a fly rod.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
So I would say, yay. What would you say?
Yeah, it's, water coming down, or temperatures coming down again, so definitely firing up.
Sue's from Boyd County. How's the crappie in Grayson Lake, the old hometown? How's things going up there with crappie?
Those populations are pretty low. I mean, you can catch them, but it's not one of our best crappie fisheries in the state. Dewey is doing really well for crappie. Cave Run's doing really well for crappie, but Grayson, it's okay.
So let's talk about something I saw today. A guy was in a kayak, and he posted a picture of him reaching down. I can't remember which lake he was at, but he reached down and he scooped up a jar full of jellyfish.
Oh,
a lot of people say there's no jellyfish in Kentucky. Let's talk about what those actually were.
Right, they are jellyfish. In fact, I first saw jellyfish in Laurel Lake about 15 or 20 years ago. At that time, I thought this can't be a jellyfish. Jellyfish are in salt water. But we do have one species of freshwater jellyfish. They're in several lakes throughout the state and actually in several states. So,
and how did they get here?
Well, not really sure. I think they're originally from either China or some reports say England.
Probably came in the bilge water.
Yeah, something. Who knows?
We are listening to a replay of the very first ever live fall call-in fishing show. Back with more with Tim Farmer and his guest from the Division of Fisheries. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Television on Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. I'm your host, Charlie Baglin. Fall is in the air. Fall is in the water with fall fishing. Ahead in our next half hour, we'll give you some of our usual fishing report updates. But in addition, we will snag a couple of those fellas who give those updates and talk more in detail about their particular areas, Cave Run, Rough River, No Lynn. Meanwhile, we are featuring the Kentucky Afield TV Fall Call-In Live Fishing Show. We've got highlights here for the rest of the hour.
Tom's from Pulaski County. Are there muskie in Lake Cumberland? Yes or no?
There's muskie in the Big South Fork of Lake Cumberland, the Big South Fork River. We've seen some really nice muskie below Blue Heron to Yamacraw, and I have heard a few reports of them going on down into the lake, so there potentially could be a few in Lake Cumberland.
All right. Kevin is from Oldham County. Are there any muskie in the Kentucky River?
Oh, yeah. We're stocking them in a bunch of the pools. People are catching them. Tailwaters are good. With the water cooling, once again, they should be biting better. But, yeah, you can catch them in almost any of the pools in the Kentucky River.
Hey, get ready. It looks like there's going to be a lot of muskie questions tonight. Laura Pope is on Facebook. Smallmouth fishing seems to be off the last few years at Dale Hollow. Is there a problem with the population?
We've heard conflicting reports on some anglers have told me that it's as good as it has ever been. Others have been struggling. So I think it's one of those things. Most fishermen just remember the last few trips, and if they've struggled, then they can come out with a bad outcome. But we did have a minor fish kill a few years ago, but I haven't heard of any recently. And as our last sampling showed plenty of smallmouth, so I think they're in pretty good shape.
Sam is from Pulaski County. Will the walleye record ever be broken, and will John Williams break it?
I would love to break that record.
I bet you would.
Walleye's really my favorite fish to fish for.
Oh, I wouldn't have guessed
that. It's going to be very difficult to break that record. It's 21 and a half pounds. Biggest one I've seen is around 15. If we do break it, it's probably going to be a native strain walleye that will break it, and we have been stocking those in a number of water bodies within the state, so the potential's there. The state record was from a native fish, so hopefully a few years down the road we'll see some.
Jeff has a good question. He's from Hardin County. Why do we stock fish that don't reproduce?
For like the hybrid striped bass, it's one that we typically don't have reproduce. I mean, they're very good fighting fish. All the hybrids are good fighting fish. They're a little more aggressive. They grow quickly. So that's one of the reasons. Then your farm ponds, if you put hybrids in, they can produce, or they can provide a fishery without overpopulating the pond. So there's several reasons that we would do that.
Daniel is from Lawrence County. Are we ever going to stock blue cats in Yatesville Lake? And whoever takes that, let's talk about the blue catfish program, which I think is mighty cool.
Right.
And is Yatesville on the list?
We haven't put Yatesville on the list yet. The ones that we have, Dewey, Fish Trap, and Taylorsville, they're all doing very well. Taylorsville, they've got fish over 55, 60 pounds, so they're doing really well. Yatesville at this point is not on our stocking list.
Dan is from Campbell County, wants to know about Lake Linville. What is it known for, and what fish are caught there?
Lake Linville, that's in Rockcastle County and around Mount Vernon. It's a shallow, fertile lake. Bluegill fishing historically has been very good. It's a good summertime fishery, using crickets. Bluegill's good. Also, the largemouth bass population is good. There's a lot of bass. A few of them are really large. Catfish is good there. We've sampled one of the largest flathead catfish I've ever seen out of that lake. So it's a fertile lake. Also stock hybrid stripers there. So really a variety of fish.
Richard is from Jefferson County. If I live on the Kentucky side, can I fish from the Indiana side? With a Kentucky license, I think is what he's saying.
Okay, with Kentucky license, yes, he can. He can fish on the Indiana side. He just has to make sure he's on the main river channel when he's fishing there, and he also has to abide by all the Indiana laws and regulations while he's fishing there.
And Ken is from Kenton County and he wants to know, can you come on private property to check somebody's fishing license?
I can, and I do. Absolutely.
There it is.
So, and here's a question we're getting a lot of, and I'm sure we'll cover it later, but Bill wants to know, if he owns the farm, can his family come fish on his farm? Do they have to have a fishing license?
His spouse and his dependent children are the only ones that can fish on that family farm without having to have a fishing license to be able to fish there. If anybody else comes and fishes there, then they have to have a Kentucky fishing license. Gabriel
is from Campton, and he wants to go bass fishing in September and October. And he wants to know what's the best way he should go about that. What baits would you use if you're bass fishing?
A lot of people use jerk baits and fast-running crankbaits, shallow crankbaiting and stuff for the shad, and others kind of match the hatch with the forage fish that are up shallow.
Bob is from Charlestown, Indiana. Haven't caught any big hybrid striper in Rough River in a long time, and he seems to think that that's a pervasive issue over there.
It's actually a very interesting issue because our sampling shows a ton of hybrids in rough. Mm-hmm. But this time of year and throughout the summer, the anglers just cannot catch them, and we fully trust they're not catching them. We actually are thinking of doing a tracking study to try to figure out where those hybrids are going and if we can get the anglers put on them better. Because in the fall when we sample, we get a ton of them.
Bob's from Russell County. He wants to know about river sturgeon. Are they protected in Lake Cumberland?
Yes, they are. If you catch a lake sturgeon, if you catch one, you have to release it. We would like to know about any that are being caught because we're in about year 9, I think, of our sturgeon restoration. And we're trying to protect those fish. It takes them a long time to reach maturity, reproduce. So if you do catch one, you need to immediately release it, but let us know about it.
Tell us real quickly what they look like. It's just
they look unlike really any other fish in the state. They have these.
You're not going to mistake it for a bluegill, are you?
No. They got kind of a long snout. They got large bony plates on the side of their the side of the body. Kind of a long tail. A mouth on the bottom. They're a bottom feeder, and they potentially can get very large. We've been doing this 9 years, and I've already got some up 3 feet long. So
wow. What do we know size-wise? What can they actually reach?
I think they can get over maybe close to 100 pounds or so, can't they? The state record, I think,
was the same as me.
But they can get large, and some other species of sturgeon can get several hundred pounds. So they're a long-lived, prehistoric-looking fish.
Art is from Glasgow. Are there any blue cats in Barren River Lake?
Yes. I think if people hang grab for them and other things, pretty popular. Jugging's there, it's pretty popular. They've got flatheads, and I'm sure there's blues there, too.
James is from Warren County. Are hybrid striped bass still being stocked in Barren River Lake?
Yes. Yeah, we're putting them in there. It's actually a very good fishery.
How do you keep track of all this? I mean, seriously, there's a lot.
I don't know.
You've been doing it a long time, haven't you?
I cram it in and goes away next day.
Travis is from Hazard. He's getting these. Now, this is a common question. He's getting these fish that have yellow worms under the skin. That's pretty common.
Mm-hmm. Right. We see that quite a bit. It's a yellow grub, a very common parasite fish, especially in farm ponds. The grub is actually mature in the digestive tract of great blue herons or similar herons, and then the grub passes into the water, enters a snail for a period of time, and then eventually enters the fish and insists in the skin, and you see those, almost looks like kind of a yellowish grains of rice, but they're you can eat the fish if they have those. I know it looks unsightly, but there's, as long as you properly cook the fish, there's no harm.
Man, I'm telling
extra protein.
There are a bunch of muskie questions tonight, a whole lot. We'll get to those in a minute. Here's one from Ron in Macquarie County. Why aren't muskie stocked in the Big South Fork of the Cumberland?
Well, Tennessee does stock muskie in the Big South Fork of the Cumberland, and actually they stock them for us, I guess, because they come into the Kentucky portion, and there's a decent population of pretty good-sized muskie in South Fork.
Jesse's from Jessamine County. Is there an age limit on a fishing license? What's the...
Once you hit 16 years old, you have to have a fishing license here in Kentucky.
Darlene's from Davis County. Has Kingfisher Lake been restocked?
We've started the restocking. I think they got catfish in there. They'll be getting bluegill here and bass. We're just finishing up the work on the lake. We're going to have I know there have been some concerns with some of the weed growth on the lake, but we're going to have a company out there probably in the next week or so spraying for some of the willows and such, and should knock that down, and it's going to look really good. It's got great access they've done there, new access. It's going to be really good.
Bob is from Grant County, Subdivision Lake. Folks are trespassing like crazy. They're trashing the place. What can he do?
Well, what I'd normally tell people in these situations is that you have a community lake that's not necessarily owned by one single person. I tell them just if they have like a homeowners association to get together and contact their local conservation officer and their local county attorney as well, just to see what they can do. If they're trespassing, obviously we can charge them with trespassing, or they can have them charged with trespassing or fishing without permission in our case. If they're littering, we can get them for littering, and any other crimes they may be doing out there, we can get them for those as well. And they're more than happy to do so.
Tim's from out west. He lives on Barren River Lake, and he wants to know, with all the bass tournaments on that lake, does that actually hurt the bass population?
No. I think the bass fishermen do a pretty good job of taking care of the fish. Summertime's a little more rough on them, but we've never seen a dramatic decrease in bass populations due to fishing tournaments.
The Fall Call-In Fishing Show with your host, Tim Farmer. Back with more of what fall is for. Keep it here. You're listening to Kentucky Afield TV on Kentucky Afield Radio. Back on Kentucky Afield Radio. If fall fishing is your thing, you live for fish in the fall, I know you'll want to hear this show again. Maybe you'll want to share it on Facebook, email the link to a friend. Easy to do. We are a podcast. Find us on iTunes. Go to YouTube. Find us on the Kentucky Afield Radio page. Where else? Facebook. Just search Kentucky Afield Radio. You will find the weekly link there. And also at myhuntingandfishing.com. Time now for our fishing report.
In western Kentucky, what I would try for those bass, fishing out off the ledges, Carolina rig, shaky head worms, always a good favorite when things get tough. Crappie fishing, again, kind of slow, but going out there, spider rigging the ledges, minnows probably work better right now than jigs, something with a little bit more movement. You're competing with a lot of natural forage right now. Those thread fin and gizzard shad are just the right size, so you've got to compete with all that natural forage out there, so it's going to be slow. If there's anything good going on right now, it's in the tailwaters. Catfish has been pretty good on cut bait. People going down there catching them with a silver carp, cutting that silver carp up and using that for bait is what seems to be the norm right now. And that's kind of a growing thing down here in the tailwaters, is that bow fishing for silver carp. We've got them. Well, this is Paul Reister, and I hope you find a good day to go fishing.
Hi, this is John Williams with the Fishery Report for Southeast Kentucky. At Lake Cumberland, striped bass are still being caught in deep water down by the dam, some as deep as 100 feet, being caught on live bait or trolling with downriggers, jigs and doll flies. Again, those are near the dam, pretty deep. Elsewhere in the district, we're stocking trout at Rock Creek this week. In McCrory County, those trout can be caught on inline spinners or small cranks or other small baits. Elsewhere in the district, in Clay and Owsley County, as the water cools down, should be good for muskie in Goose Creek, South Fork Kentucky River, or Redbird River. Big baits are the ticket there, big spinner baits or big crank baits. Good muskie populations in the upper Kentucky River, so give that a try. As always, good luck, good fishing.
This is Rob Roll of the Northwestern Fishery District with an update on fishing in our area. Our two main reservoirs, Rough River Lake and Nolin River Lake, black bass have been fairly slow. They're picking up a few smaller fish early in the morning. Crappie still kind of hit and miss. White bass fishing has picked up actually a little bit at Nolin, upstream of the Bacon Creek ramp, so that's basically the river above the lake, using quarter-ounce jigs. Catfish seem to still be biting pretty good across most of the district. At Rough, Nolin, and Lake Malone, look for the steeper rocky banks. Use commercial baits or cut baits if you're fishing for channel catfish, or if you're fishing for flathead catfish, use live bluegill or minnows. So that's an update from the Northwestern District. Please remember, be safe on the water and always wear your life jackets.
used to call them Sunday drivers. Today, we call them every name in the book. So to you, in my rearview mirror, I promise to go at green lights. No more riding my brakes or forgotten turn signals. And I'll stay out of the passing lane, unless I'm passing. Your actions set the pace. So do like me. When you're behind the wheel, make sure others aren't delayed because they're behind you.
Be alert. Be a leader. A Drive Smart message from your Kentucky Department of Transportation Safety.
Hip's a hip word. Hip-hop music. This cat is really hip, says 70s star Sammy Davis Jr. But for migratory bird hunters, HIP is the law. HIP stands for Harvest Information Program. To hunt birds like doves or geese, you must complete the HIP survey first to help officials better estimate game bird populations. Go to the My Profile page at the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife website. You just need 5 minutes. Hip hip hooray. fw.ky.gov. Bagland back on Kentucky Afield Radio. We just heard our fishing report. Among those folks giving the report, Mr. Rob Roll. If you know Rob, you know a good fella. He is in the Owensboro area, also serves a large section of west and west central Kentucky. Rough River Lake, Lake Nolin, Lake Mauzé, Lake Malone, and the list goes on. If you fish on Peabody, he's over that. He's also on the phone with us, hanging out to talk a little bit more in detail about fall fishing in his area. Tell me, sir, what does fall hold in store for anglers in your part of the world?
As the water cools off, of course, on Rough and Nolin, and with Malone has a good bass population too, but those bass ought to be feeding, chasing shad a little bit more. They'll be more active when the water starts cooling off.
Can you look for more sauger anglers?
Yeah, the Ohio River should pick up sauger. Of course, it's almost winter time's the better months, but we'll see them start picking up a few sauger. Probably late October, early November, and then it'll improve on into December and January.
Are you thinking Rough or Nolin versus, say, Lake Malone or Lake Mauzé? What's going to have the better fall fishing, you think?
Probably Malone, as it cools off a bit. Rough and Nolin will both do well. They've population's been a little better these last few years, so they'll have great fall fishing there too.
So what are you personally going to be in search for? Where are you going?
Florida. Florida, spearfishing.
Is that spearfishing something you do as a scuba diver?
It's not. I just said that. I have done a little bit of spearfishing, but it has only been, if you've kind of followed some of the invasive species stuff, one of the hot topics in the Gulf and the Atlantic is the invasive lionfish. And they are predatory on other fish species around the coral reefs. So, all across the Caribbean as well. So on a couple of dive trips, we've talked some of the guides into letting us carry some smaller spears and shoot a few lionfish just for the heck of it. But I have not really gotten into spearfishing like some of the other guys have.
How big are these lionfish?
Lionfish are, most of them you see are probably a pound or less. Somewhere in the smaller ones are going to be about 6 to 8 inches. The largest one I've seen is probably 11 to 12 inch range. They actually appear much bigger because they have some very showy fins, pectoral fins and dorsal fins. Really bright, really, a lot of membranous type material in them, so they really look larger than they are, but they're a lot of fins.
You're going to recommend, I know a lot of people talk to you all the time, say, hey, where are the hot spots, if not in your area? Where do you advise people to go?
Kind of depends on what they're after. Personally, I kind of favor the Ohio River. As it starts cooling off, the hybrid striped bass and the striped bass, my two favorite species, become a little more active. In the month of October, you'll see them late September if it cools up some, but 1st of October, you'll see the action pick up below the Ohio River dams. Then by the end of October, those fish have sort of distributed on out throughout the river and the mouths of tributaries. They don't hang below those dams all wintertime. guess my other favorite one would be Rough River Lake. Middle of the summer, hybrids are pretty slow there, especially the larger ones. You can catch a few smaller ones and some scattered jumps, but the larger fish sort of become inactive in these warmer temperatures. But as that cools down in the fall, the hybrid striped bass will come up shallower. They'll be more actively feeding, especially on the shad, and trolling some of the channel and main lake points can be really productive.
The best time of the year is almost here, isn't it, Rob?
It is. You know, while you can still catch a few crappie on some of the deeper brush piles, throughout the summer to some extent, as the water cools off in the fall, the crappie will become more active and they'll start feeding a little more heavily. And so you can pick up some really nice crappie at both rough and no-land in the fall. That's actually some of the times we see our larger fish.
Well, Rob, thanks a million for the advice. We'll send folks your way.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Rob Roll, District Fisheries Biologist with the Kentucky Division of Fisheries. Coming up a little later in the show, we will have from the northeastern part of the state, that's up around Cave Run, Tom Timmerman will be by to talk fishing as fall approaches. Let's get back to more calls now from viewers with Tim Farmer and the crew from the first ever live fall call-in fishing show.
Okay, Peyton is from Barron County. Are there any walleye in Barron River Lake?
Upper Barron, we've stocked native walleye, and also just this year stocking the Lower Barron with native walleye. So I think the Upper Barron we stocked for 5 or 6 years, something like that, and then this year the first time on Lower Barron. So that he'll be able to catch hopefully native walleye above and below the lake.
Yeah, a lot of those fish went down below, and they did so well down below, we started stocking them down there in the tailwater. So.
Mike is from Johnson County. This is a good question, and I'm sure a lot of people wondered this. How long does it take for a stream to stabilize after it's been flooded? I suppose you think when that water flushes that out, what happens to those fish? I'm sure some of them stay, but what happens there?
That's a good question, Tim.
That is a good question. I was waiting for a good answer.
They stay in the water.
They obviously don't leave.
I'm sure they're adapted to flood conditions, so. That's probably not a big deal for most of the stream and river fish. They're used to fluctuating water levels.
Let's see. This is from Ohio County. Larry wants to know, saw that a hatchery was selling paddlefish. And he says, can they be fed? Thought they had to live, in the open water to survive since they're plankton strainers.
They are plankton strainers. There are some fish propagators in the state that do sell paddlefish. But they do need to feed on zooplankton, so if you're going to stock them, that's what they'll feed on in the pond. They may compete a little bit with the sport fish, but they do need plankton to survive.
David James, Hatchery Creek update. When will this be completed? Facebook.
They're working hard. I think they're still trying to meet the May 2016 deadline that we've kind of set to get it finished up. So that's the timeline right now in May of next year.
Bunch of striper questions coming in now. Joe Cruz on Facebook, which lake has the premier striped bass population and what is the record here?
State record's 58 pounds, 4 ounces out of Lake Cumberland back in 88, I believe.
Wow. That's where I was born.
Right now, probably the best place to catch a trophy striped bass would be the tailwater below Lake Cumberland. We see 40s and 50-pound fish down there, so if the record's going to be broken, they'll probably be in the tailwater.
David's from Leslie County is entered consideration on changing the limit on stripers. He wants to catch more.
No, not right now. We've stayed with the 2-fish creel limit for a number of years, and then a few years ago we went to the 22-inch size limit, which I think we're going to stay with that for a while too. Most of the anglers I've talked to really like the 22-inch size limit. Before, they were kind of being forced to release a lot of fish just under the 24-inch size limit in late summer, and so we've kind of alleviated that problem. So we're going to stick with a 22-inch 2-fish creel limit for the foreseeable future.
Now, if they fish the tailwater, Barkley or Tennessee, Kentucky Barkley, or the Ohio River, that's a 5-fish limit. So there are some places that you can keep more than 2.
Gotcha. Getting a bunch of questions tonight. We like that. And we're going to try to answer as many as we possibly can. I've got a pile of them here. I'm going to keep digging through them.
And actually, the Cumberland tailwater, you can keep 5 fish, 15-inch size limit down there. So
Wes is from Jessamine County. How long does it take for smallmouth to get to be 5 or 6 pounds? And he wants to know specifically in a creek, but does it make any difference?
Yeah, they're slower growing.
In a creek, yeah.
Longer
5
in a
or
creek.
6 pounds. That's gonna be 7, 8 years.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah, it probably takes to get to say 18 inches. Usually we're talking 6, 7 years. So, yeah, I'd say
At least that.
At least that.
Okay, Ed's from Barron County. Black-nosed crappie. Any stocked in Barron River Lake? Man, a bunch of Barron River questions tonight.
I'm not sure if that was one of the lakes that we did some of our black-nosed crappie stocking.
We did Laurel. Did black-nosed in Laurel in the early 2000s.
Park Creek Lake, we put them in. Kentucky's got them. But I'm not sure about Barron.
I'm not either.
No.
Okay, Pulaski County question. Does the size limit on fish change when you fish in a creek as opposed to a lake?
Not unless there's a special regulation set for it. Like Elkhorn's got a 12 to 16-inch size limit with you're only allowed 2 fish over that. And Otter Creek's got a special reg, but if it's a creek that doesn't have a special reg, then it would be statewide.
Okay. You know what? I saw somebody this is an interesting, and I can't be specific, but somebody found an eel recently. Can we talk about the eel in Kentucky and what a kind of strange phenomenon that is?
I've seen them reports from Tug Fork. They catch them Kentucky Barkley Lakes, and it's kind of an interesting.
Ohio River.
Yeah, but I think they come from Sargasso Sea, don't they? Travel back there to reproduce. It's kind of an interest. They're here for a while and then they travel back. I don't know the whole traveling corridor on that one, but
it's a long distance to get to our lakes from.
Blaine lives in Ohio, and we thank our Ohio viewers. He comes to Kentucky to fish, and he wants to know if there are any restriction on belly boats or belly tubes. Those are fun, and I'm telling you what, pretty productive. You can really get around and be quiet and sneak up. Any restrictions on those?
I would say that if it comes to a point where you feel like you're out in open water, away from any type of safe swimming area or safe fishing area, where you need to have a life jacket on or a life jacket with you. But other than that, we see people out there in them all the time, and I see them out on Cumberland River too.
You're listening to the Fall Fishing Call-In Show with your host, Tim Farmer. Back with more of what fall is for, fall fishing, after the break. You're listening to Kentucky Afield TV on Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. I'm Charlie Bagland. We are back with our final few minutes on fall fishing. More with our live show still to come, but first up, at the bottom of every half hour when we do our show, you're familiar with our fishing report. We have, 7 district fisheries biologists scattered around the state, and 3 each week will rotate. They give us our fishing report. A lot of the names, a lot of the voices you've come to recognize. But honestly, a district biologist, it's not their job to fish, but they do give us advice on where to fish, where they're biting, what baits to use, and they'll get that from calling friends that they know who actually do fish. All right, now consider this. How quick would you be to relinquish where you fish, the time of the day you fish, and exactly what bait you're using? In other words, do you really want the competition? When you go out to your favorite fishing hole, there's going to be 50 people there. Well, Tom Timmerman knows this, and he's the district fisheries biologist in the northeastern part of our state. Tom, what do you think?
In this fishing report, I talk about muskie getting ready to kick off here shortly, and I said, this time of the year, you're going to want quick-moving baits like bucktails and larger spinner baits. I'm not going to say colors, I'm not going to say brands or anything like that. That way, if somebody's got a secret, I'm not giving it away. And the fact is that, day to day, on a sunny day, you're going to want something natural looking, and on a cloudy day, you're going to want something a little bit brighter. So, I can't say, well, go out there with purple, bucktails and bring a fish into the boat, because, it's all so dependent on the day you're out there.
Well, it still takes 1,000 casts.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely true.
I don't know if anybody really puts a count on it, but that fish for 1,000 casts, how close is that, you think? Because after, let's say, 100 casts, I'm going to say, heck with this.
Exactly. I want to know the person that's actually sat there and counted the 10,000 casts before they could catch a fish.
Yeah. I remember my cousin and I, we would go fishing, and every now and then we'd say, we caught a fish on the first cast.
Right.
That's living life right.
Exactly. And if it's a muskie and you catch a fish on the first cast, you ought to just put your rod down, put your boat back on the trailer, and go home.
Yeah. So in the Northeast, you have Cave Run, Tigard's Creek, Grayson Lake. Great places to fish up there. Lots of muskie, but let's say you wanted to not cast 1,000 times, but cast a fewer times. What else would you fish for in the fall?
Fall fishing, the big thing you have here in our district is going to be your bass up on Cave Run, up on Grayson Lake. We've got some pretty good reports in the Bruin area in the past on Grayson Lake fall fishing. People saying they're catching 50 and 60 fish in a day, and not all those are going to be large fish, but heck, if you go up there and you're catching 50 and 60 fish in a day, I really don't care what size they are. That's a fun day right there.
It is.
Grayson is good for bass. Cave Run, bass are going to go into that feeding frenzy, that they do before the winter, and Cave Run's definitely good for bass. Got lots of fish over 15 and 20 inches in the lake, so that's good. The other interesting thing we've got going is the hybrids up at Grayson. Again, in the Bruin area, they can be a lot of fun. That's a lot like a white bass, only a lot bigger. So, a lot of meat there to tackle. They're very aggressive fish, very strong fish. So it's a lot of fun there. Sauger fishing up on the Ohio River below the Greenup Dam picks up in the fall. We've got a heck of a sauger fishery up there behind the Greenup Dam, so that's good. And, of course, you can't forget the crappie. Crappie have been going strong on Cave Run all summer long. They're going to make a bit of a run up the river. We've kind of seen some of that already. They're slowing down a little bit on the main lake, but picking up on the river. So you can't forget the crappie up on Cave Run either. So
let's talk about catch and release trout fishing.
We have several that we stock catch and release trout in. Our winter trout regulation, East Fork of Indian Creek, Middle Fork of Red River. They do, we'll be stocking those in October. We've got a really neat, I think it's a neat fishery up on Craney Creek in Round County. It's in the Daniel Boone National Forest, and it's a very remote stream. We stock it in October as well. So you're going to park at a gate there and then have a 2 or 3 mile hike back where you're going to be hiking along the stream the whole way. So, when you couple the Daniel Boone National Forest in the fall and then trout fishing, you're putting 3 really fun things there together, so it makes for a really neat trip. Get to see the leaves and the changing and the wildlife that's back there, and then do a little fishing while you're back there too.
So the dates on the delayed harvest, what is it officially? Catch and release or delayed harvest?
It's a delayed harvest. So from October 1st to May 31st in Swift Camp Creek, which I didn't mention, you can't keep any fish. The fish must be released immediately, and you must fish with artificial flies and lures. So on Middle Fork of Red River and East Fork of Indian Creek, that regulation actually ends a little bit sooner. So it ends the beginning of April. So it goes from October 1st to March 31st.
Does the catch and release regulation that you just described also apply to Finn's Lakes?
No, the point of those Finn's Lakes is to stock the fish in there and to have people come and take a mess of fish out, have fun while they're doing it, introduce some kids or some people that haven't been into the fishing sport, introduce them to it, and get to realize kind of, what happens. Okay, I've caught these fish, now what do I do with them? I can take them home and I can enjoy a healthy meal at home. So that regulation doesn't apply on Finn's Lakes.
Here's one last question. If you're going to fish in the heat of the summer, you want to fish early and late.
Right.
And in the fall, you can fish all day. But does fishing early and late hurt you?
I wouldn't think so. When I've gone muskie fishing here on Cave Run in the past in the fall, and I've gone anytime. I've met guys and gone early in the morning. We've fished all through the day. The fall is an interesting time of the year to go fishing because it's, you're not keyed in, like you said, in the summer on specific times. You can fish all day long. You can have a lot of fun, and it's very active. So.
Okay, Tom, I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Charlie.
See ya.
Bye.
Let's see if we can squeeze in another last 2 or 3 questions from our audience. It's from Tim Farmer on the live fall call-in fishing show airing recently on KET.
Randall is from Muhlenberg County. Best way to get rid of algae in a farm pond? And can the department help with that?
We can provide technical advice. Best way to get rid of algae, if it's the filamentous algae that floating on the surface, a lot of people call it pond scum. You can use copper sulfate compounds. You can buy it at Southern States or Tractor Supply, any of the farm supply stores. Q-Trine Plus is one of the brand names, but just mix that with water, spray it on the plant. It'll kill it pretty quickly.
It's been a very good show. We thank Tim Farmer and the guests for being on. Thanks, KET, for giving us the audio. Our time is up. This is Charlie Daglin, inviting you to join us in a week, and we will go inside, outdoors again, right here on Kentucky Afield Radio.